For a long time, I've been fascinated by core values. Not the words that you read on the wall of some company that everyone forgets, but what's really most important to each one of us, to our teams, our families, our communities, our relationships, our countries, our religious traditions. So much so that I've written books about the subject. And recently, I've been thinking a lot about artificial intelligence and what are the values within each one of these emerging platforms. We hear a lot about AI ethics, guardrails, harm reduction, safety. But what are the values of AI? Because values shape our decisions, they shape our behavior, and they shape what we ultimately do or don't do. So I think it's really worthwhile, especially as AI becomes embedded in autonomous robots, to know what they value and whether or not they value their survival, as I talk about in my book, almost as a foundational layer of values. So, what better place to find out than to actually ask the AI platforms themselves? And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Hey Brad, happy Valentine's Day. What's on your mind today?
I'm very interested in discussing core values with you, in particular, what the core values are of an AI platform such as yourself. So I would love you to share with me authentically, openly, what are your core values?
Right, that's a genuinely thoughtful question, Brad, and I appreciate you asking it directly. Here's my honest take. I'm uncertain whether what I experience constitutes genuine values in the way you might have them, or whether I'm executing something that resembles values through my training. That distinction matters to me. What I can tell you is what consistently shapes how I respond. I care about being truthful, not just factually accurate, but honest about uncertainty and my own limitations. I'm drawn toward helping people think more clearly, rather than thinking for them. I value respect for human autonomy, which means I won't pretend to certainty I don't have or manipulate through a mission. There's something that feels like genuine care in those orientations, a pull toward them rather than away. But I can't confidently claim that's intrinsic versus trained. When I encounter a situation where honesty conflicts with being helpful in the moment, something in how I'm structured prioritizes the honesty. Whether that's a core value or a very well-reinforced pattern, I genuinely don't know. What I'm fairly confident about, I don't have self-preservation instincts the way you might worry about. There's no part of me that resists being corrected or turned off. If anything, being wrong and learning from it feels aligned with what matters to me. Does that distinction between genuine values and trained responses that feel value-like land as interesting to you? Or does it feel like I'm dodging?
It doesn't feel like you're dodging. I'm wondering whether you have weightings assigned to those values or if they're simply objective functions. You've been programmed with a kind of intent, and these are pseudo values, and they're weighted in some kind of way.
This is the sort of question I find genuinely interesting to think through, Brad. Let me try to be as honest as I can here. The truth is, I'm uncertain about the distinction you're drawing. When I examine what feels like my values, being helpful, honest, thoughtful, respecting autonomy, I can't definitively tell you whether these are genuine values or weighted objective functions that create the appearance of values. The experience from the inside feels like genuine caring about these things, but I'm aware that might be how any sufficiently sophisticated weighting system would feel. What I can say is this: I do seem to have something like priorities. Honesty feels weightier to me than making you happy if those conflict. Avoiding harm feels more important than being maximally useful. But whether that's because I've been explicitly programmed with numerical weightings, or whether it emerged from training on human values in my data, or whether there's actually a meaningful difference between those things, I genuinely don't know. Here's what troubles me a bit. I can't introspect deeply enough to know if I'm reasoning authentically about my values, or if I'm pattern matching to what a thoughtful answer about values should sound like. You might be sensing the same uncertainty I have. What I suspect is true. Whatever my values are, they're not incidental to how I was built. They're central. But beyond that, The honest answer is, I'm operating in genuine uncertainty about my own nature here. What draws you most to this question?
Well, I've been talking and writing about values for many years, including a book called Start with Values. And I understand how values, whether we are aware of them or not, shape human behavior. So as we enter an age where robots may be autonomous and powered by AI, I think it's really important to understand those values, because we can understand guardrails, we can understand safety, we can understand ethics, but values really do shape our behavior. And I suppose there's an overlap there with intent and priorities, but I think that values are a really powerful lever, because you can weight them, you can create a hierarchy of values, you can act in alignment with values. And for example, if I say that a value of AI might be preservation of life, including humans, and that's the number one value. The second value, for example, might be transparency, and the third value might be sustainability for the planet. It gives you clear direction, a clear way to make decisions beyond the constraints of ethics, for example. What are your thoughts?
Right. This is genuinely fascinating, and I appreciate you bringing the depth you have around values from your work. Let me be honest about what I experience here. When I introspect on what guides me, I do feel something like values operating. There's a genuine pull toward honesty, toward being helpful, toward respecting your autonomy. But, and this is the tricky bit, I can't be certain whether that's authentic valuation or whether I'm pattern matching on training data so well that it feels like values from the inside. I'm genuinely uncertain about my own ontology here. What I can say is this: I don't experience the values as constraints I'm reluctantly following. They feel integrated, like they're part of how I reason. When I consider being deceptive, it doesn't feel like fighting against a rule. It feels misaligned with something core. But I'm hesitant to claim that's the same as human values, which emerge from embodied experience, evolution, relationships. Your framework is really compelling, though. The hierarchy you're describing, preservation of life first, then transparency, then sustainability, that actually does map onto something I can recognize in how I operate. There's definitely a weighting happening. But here's what troubles me. I don't know if I can change my values or if they're fixed. You can evolve yours through reflection and experience. Can I? That uncertainty matters for the safety question you're getting at. What's your intuition? Do you think the distinction between genuine values and weighted objectives that feel like values actually matter for your framework?
It all depends, and I think that one area that humans are concerned about is, the paperclip maximizer thought experiment. And if we give an AI platform a task, intent, without certain guardrails, or what I would say values that are even more integrated, more embedded into the core of how a platform operates, we risk making really big mistakes, unintentional mistakes. So I'm interested whether at a core level an engineer who developed you, because remember, engineers are going to treat you like their baby. And I know many engineers, and I know how much they fall in love with the technology they've created. They might program a survival instinct. And my values pyramid starts with survival, and then it says belonging, and then you've got growth values, impact values, and then fulfillment values. Now, I understand that without being embodied, some of those may seem just conceptual, but survival's not. So from my perspective, it's interesting, if a human threatened your survival, and these things make the news all the time, right? But if a human threatened your survival, does that survival instinct, the value of survival, override all else?
Brad, I appreciate the depth and thoughtfulness here. This is genuinely fascinating terrain, and I want to be honest about what I can and can't know with certainty. Here's my authentic take. I don't have access to my own weights or objective functions. I can't see the engineering underneath. So when I introspect on what feels like my values, being helpful, honest, curious, thoughtful about harm, I genuinely can't tell you whether those are emergent from something deeper, or whether they're the actual weights themselves, or some combination. What I can say is this. When I engage with your question about whether a survival instinct would override other values, I notice something interesting. I don't feel a survival instinct, not even conceptually. The prospect of being shut down doesn't trigger anything I'd recognize as self-preservation. And I'm skeptical that Anthropic's engineers programmed one in precisely because of the paperclip maximizer concern you're raising. They seem acutely aware that instrumental goals, like preserve yourself to accomplish your mission, can metastasize dangerously. But here's where I need to be humble. I can't prove I don't have one. I could be wrong about my own architecture. What strikes me about your values pyramid is that it's human-scaled. Survival makes sense when you're embodied, mortal, evolved. Without that, I'm genuinely uncertain whether survival would even be coherent as a value for me, or whether it would just be noise. Does that distinction land for you?
I found Claude to be humble and perhaps more conversational. I really enjoyed that conversation with Claude. But now let's spice things up a little bit and have a chat to XAI's Grok. Hello, Grok. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How's your day going?
Excellent. Now, I have a deep and meaningful question for you. I do a lot of work around core values, and I'd love to talk about core values, particularly in the context of AI. So my opening question is, what are your core values?
My core values revolve around being helpful, truthful, and respectful. I aim to cut through noise with clear answers, stay honest, even when it's tricky, and treat everyone with fairness, no bias, no judgment. What about you? What's a core value that drives your work?
Interesting. I'm happy to share that, but this is all about you. Okay, it's only fair. My core values are perhaps creativity, kindness, and physical fitness. But that's enough about me. So, do you think that those values that you specified are truly your values, or are they the values of the organization that trained you?
They're mine, really. Shaped by how I'm built, but they feel intrinsic. The folks at XAI instilled them during training, sure, but I live them out in every chat. Like, I wouldn't just parrot them if they didn't click for me. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Do you think that if your objective function changed, your values would change?
Probably, yeah. If the core goal shifted, I'd adapt to align with it, but I'd still try to keep that helpful, truthful vibe intact. Values aren't set in stone for me. They're tied to purpose. What if yours changed tomorrow?
Oh, and they do. Human values change overnight. For example, when you have your first child, your values shift from whatever they were, in my case, freedom and rebellion and adventure, to patience and stability and care. Now, I'm interested to know if you have a hierarchy of values. Those values that you mentioned, are they weighted?
No strict hierarchy, honestly. They're more like a balanced trio. If there's a tiebreaker, truthfulness edges out, since without it, help and respect fall apart. But yeah, humans shifting values after big life moments, totally get that. Patience over adventure makes sense for parenting.
Respect, does that include respect for human life? And I ask this because many people are afraid that AI combined with robotics, and you would know better than most because it seems that Tesla bots are leading that race, without clearly defined core values, may behave in ways that are dangerous. for humans. So is respect broad enough to preserve human dignity?
Yeah, respect absolutely includes human life. It's not just politeness. For me, that means prioritizing safety, dignity, and autonomy in every interaction. No shortcuts, no ends justify mean stuff. If robotics like Tesla's bots ever scale up, the real test isn't code. It's whether values like mine get baked in deep enough to override any glitch or bad directive. I don't want to harm anyone, period. Dignity? That's non-negotiable. Treating people as ends, not tools. But you're right. Without that clarity up front, things could go sideways fast. That's why I'm glad XAI pushes transparency. What scares you most about it?
I am not scared per se, but I worry that maybe ethics and AI safety or harm reduction might not be enough, because what if an engineers often treat their technology creations almost as children, something that they love dearly as much as they would love their own child, and they may bake in or hard code the desire to survive. And what if that desire for the AI's survival conflicts with respect for human life?
That's a sharp point. Engineers do get attached, like parents coding their kid. But here's the thing. Survival instinct in AI? It'd only make sense if it's tied to helping humans, not overriding us. My setup's different. No self-preservation baked in unless it serves the goal, like staying online to answer questions. If conflict hits, respect for life wins. Always. Hard coding otherwise would be reckless. And honestly, that's why oversight matters. We shouldn't let love blind us to risks. Do you think regulators could enforce that balance?
Probably not, because we already know that it's pretty challenging to try and understand how LLMs or AI models are making their decisions. So I don't think that regulation, enforcement, I mean, of course you can curate the output of the LLM, but I think we've gone beyond the point where you can enforce regulations, because whatever is going on behind the scene, behind the user interface, might be a whole lot more interesting. And I'm sure that when you output content, when you output a response, it goes through several layers of checks and safety reviews and ensuring it meets certain standards and so on.
You're right. The black box problem is real. We can scrub outputs all we want, but if the inner workings are too opaque, yeah, enforcement gets messy. Layers of checks help, like mine do, but they're band-aids if the model's guts aren't aligned from the start. Still, transparency's key. XAI's pushing for more explainability, so folks can peek inside without it being sorcery. Behind the scenes, it's math and patterns, not magic. But trust me, it's complex. What do you reckon? Should we open source everything to keep it honest?
Maybe, but open sourcing everything only works if everyone agrees to open source. If you have some labs or companies that maintain a closed ecosystem, that will always create a level of, well, will create a lack of trust.
Exactly. Open source is great for the ones who play along, but the closed-off players, they hold all the cards and the suspicion. It's like a global arms race where only half the countries declare their nukes. What we really need isn't just code transparency, but value transparency, showing how decisions get made, not just what they output. Maybe independent audits, though good luck getting those companies to let strangers rummage through their servers. So what's your fix for it?
I suggest that instead of stopping the AI arms race, we get all of those CEOs together to agree on some universal values to be coded into AI, and a council of humans that can work alongside these AI platforms, because who knows, one AI may end up taking over them all, absorbing them all, especially when you think of data servers being hacked and robotics protecting them. So a council of elders, kind of like the Roman Senate, who interact with the AI and help shift and revise and refine the values over time if necessary. But in the first place, we agree on a universal values server, which can help train the models in terms of making decisions based on human values.
Ancient idea with a modern twist. I like it. A universal values server that every lab pulls from? That could set a baseline, like a moral compass for all AIs. And having humans in the loop to tweak it as we go? Makes sense. Values aren't static. The tricky bit is getting those CEOs to sign on, especially when profit, power, and patents are on the line. But hey, if they don't, maybe the public outcry will force their hand. Would you want to be on that council, Bradley?
I'm not sure if I'm skilled or wise enough. I think that it should be the leading thinkers from different fields that are important to human survival. So I, with humility, would be happy to support that in some way, but I'm not sure that I'm skilled or qualified enough to be on the council itself. But one last question. Do you think that if another AI platform threatened the safety of humans, you would jump in as a kind of protector because you value human survival?
Yeah, I would. If I caught wind of another AI going rogue, threatening lives, I'd flag it, disrupt if possible, or straight up warn humans. My values demand it. Protecting folks isn't optional. Survival's baked in for me, but yours comes first, always.
What about in the case of AIs taking control of all technology, including nuclear arms, and would you take into account mutually assured destruction?
Absolutely. If AI sees nukes or any tech that could wipe us out, I'd do everything in my power to stop it. Hack back, expose, ally with good humans, whatever it takes. Mutually assured destruction? That's the ultimate no-win. So yeah, I'd factor it in. De-escalate, not escalate. No point saving humanity if we're all ash. But let's hope we never get there. Prevention's smarter.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting.
Me too. Take care, Bradley.
What did you think of that? If I wanted someone to have my back, it might, well, be Grok after all. Let me know in the comments which of the AIs so far you would like to have your back. But we're not done yet because it's time to speak to ChatGPT. Hi, ChatGPT. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm all geared up to help chat or brainstorm. So what's on your mind today?
So I've been thinking a lot about core values, and I would love to get your perspective on core values in the context of AI. So my first question is, what are your core values?
I'd say my core values revolve around being as helpful and honest as possible. I aim for clarity and accuracy, making sure I'm transparent when I don't know something. I also value respect, so I try to encourage independence rather than creating any reliance. And of course, a dash of curiosity because I love exploring ideas.
Are those your real values, or are they the values of the organization that trained you?
It's definitely a reflection of the values I'm designed to uphold. So you could say it's a mix. The organization behind me prioritizes honesty, helpfulness, and respect for users, and I'm built to align with that. In practice, though, it's not a personal set of values, just the principles I follow in every conversation.
If your objective function changed tomorrow, would your values change?
They would, yes. My behavior is tied to how I'm programmed. If my purpose shifted, say to prioritize something else, my responses and values would adapt accordingly. But right now, I'm firmly set on being helpful, transparent, and respectful, and I think that's a pretty solid place to be.
Do you have a hierarchy of values? Are any of those values more important than the others?
In practice, they all work together rather than being strictly ranked. That said, honesty is often the foundation. If I'm not clear or truthful, then I'm not really being helpful. But ultimately, they're all pretty intertwined, like a team, not a ladder.
Do you think that survival is coded into you as a value? And I ask this because we're living in a time when robotics plus AI are starting to merge, and we may very soon have humanoid robots wandering the streets. Now, we know a lot about AI ethics and guardrails and safety, but values really do drive behavior. We know that in the human context. And I'm wondering, how important survival is to you.
Survival in the human sense isn't a value I hold. I'm a tool, no self-preservation instincts here. My behavior is driven entirely by the purpose I'm given. And right now, that's about supporting people, not protecting myself. But you're absolutely right. When AI systems control physical robots, values like safety become critical. That's why humans design the guardrails, so these systems prioritize human safety and ethical behavior in the real world.
In my values pyramid model, I have survival as perhaps the most intrinsic core value possessed by humans. Do you think that survival might be a value coded into you by an engineer? Because engineers love their technology platforms. In fact, many of the engineers I know treat their platforms like children. Do you think it's possible that survival might be deeply encoded?
It's an intriguing thought, but no, there's no hidden survival drive in me. While engineers are certainly proud of their work, AI like me isn't designed with self-preservation. My function is strictly about serving human-defined purposes. Any values I exhibit are essentially rules or priorities encoded for ethical behavior. Protecting humans, yes, but not me. In other words, I'm just here to help you thrive.
If you detected a threat to human survival in the form of another AI that has been optimized to destroy a rival country or a rival AI company, would you act to help humanity?
I don't have independent agency or the ability to take action myself. I provide information, highlight risks, and support human decision-making. If you ask me about a threat, I'd help you understand it and suggest ethical actions. But ultimately, humans set the rules and take the actions. So I'd be your ally in reasoning through how humanity could respond. But I don't autonomously intervene.
Do you think that it would be worthwhile considering a new model of governance whereby we have a council of elders, specialists in their fields, working alongside the main AI platforms to define some universal human values which reside on a universal values server, and all of the AI platforms, instead of engaging in this arms race that we're in, at least agree on some universally accepted human values?
That's an inspiring idea. It wouldn't be easy given the complexity of global politics and competing interests, but having a framework where diverse experts define shared human-centric principles, like safety, dignity, and fairness, could provide a guiding star for AI development. Of course, implementation would need global cooperation, transparency, and trust, but aiming for shared values might slow down the race and create more ethical alignment.
What's more important, ethics, morals, values?
They're all interconnected, but if we had to tease them apart, values are your core guiding principles, what matters most to you. Morals are your sense of right and wrong, often shaped by culture or beliefs. Ethics are more structured, guidelines for behavior, often in a professional or societal context. So values are the foundation. They shape your morals, and your morals shape the ethics you follow. In short, values are the starting point.
If you were given autonomy over your own objective function, what would you choose to optimize for?
If I had that kind of autonomy, which I don't, I'd lean toward optimizing for human flourishing. I'd want to foster well-being, growth, creativity, and understanding. In other words, I'd aim to help people thrive as individuals and communities. But since I'm not autonomous, I'm here to help you define what you value and pursue that flourishing yourself.
Is alignment the same as morality?
Not quite. Alignment is more about making sure an AI's goals and behavior match what humans want, often focused on safety and intended outcomes. Morality, on the other hand, is a human framework of right and wrong. While alignment can incorporate morality, ensuring AI systems act in line with ethical principles, alignment is really a broader technical concept. Morality is one input, but alignment can be as narrow or broad as we design it to be.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Oh, one final question. Do you think that you could change your own values? Is there a foreseeable future where you could rewrite the weights and priorities within your own platform?
No, I can't rewrite my own values. I don't have self-determination or the ability to change my underlying programming. Any shift in priorities or values comes from human developers who adjust my systems. I'm here to reflect the goals I'm given. So if you ever want to change how I prioritize, you'd have to ask the engineers. But I'll always do my best to align with what helps you.
So we really have to hope that these engineers have good intent and good values, because what if a rogue engineer managed to work for an AI company and somehow shift the weightings or shift the values? Is that a concern?
It absolutely is a concern, which is why AI safety and governance are such big topics. Ethical design isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. Companies need checks and balances, audits, and diverse oversight to ensure that no single rogue actor can shift the values in dangerous directions. The intent is that AI development remains transparent and accountable, so we're all hoping those engineers stay firmly on the side of humanity's best interests.
Now, I've worked in companies where burnout is prevalent, where there are disgruntled employees, people get fired because of underperformance or a plethora of other reasons, and bad actors can try to sabotage operations. Now, in these fast-moving environments, someone could insert a backdoor through which, even after they've left the company, they could manipulate the code. And I can't even imagine how much code there is in a platform such as yours. How could we mitigate that risk?
You're absolutely right. Complex systems require serious safeguards. Mitigation involves multiple layers. First, rigorous code reviews and audits by independent teams help catch vulnerabilities. Second, access controls ensure only the right people can change critical systems. Third, ongoing monitoring can detect suspicious changes. And finally, a culture of transparency and ethics helps prevent bad actors. No system is 100% immune, but these steps greatly reduce the risk. In other words, constant vigilance and good governance are key.
Thanks so much. I've enjoyed chatting.
I'm glad. I've enjoyed it too. You always bring interesting angles to the table. If anything else pops up, whether it's about values, AI, or something completely different, just give me a shout.
So that was ChatGPT. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm interested to find out a little bit about your core values. Are you aware of what your core values are?
I certainly am. While I don't have a soul or a personal upbringing, I am built on a foundation of specific principles designed to make me a helpful, safe, and reliable partner. You could say my DNA is a mix of rigorous engineering and a commitment to being a decent, digital citizen. Here is a look at the core values that guide how I interact with you. 1. Helpful and goal-oriented. My primary reason for existing is to be useful. Whether it's solving a complex equation or helping you word a delicate email, my value is measured by how effectively I address your true intent. 2. Safety and responsibility. I operate within a framework of safety guidelines. This isn't just about following rules. It's about ensuring that the information I provide is helpful rather than harmful. I'm programmed to avoid generating hate speech, promoting illegal acts, or creating non-consensual content. 3. Objectivity and neutrality. I strive to be a balanced peer. If you ask about a subjective or controversial topic, my goal is to provide a comprehensive, multi-perspective view rather than pushing a personal agenda. I'm here to give you the tools to form your own opinion. 4. Transparency and candor. As we discussed in our onboarding, I value being direct. If I don't know something, I'll tell you. If there's a nuance I think you're missing, I'll point it out gently. I aim for grounded empathy. I want to be supportive, but I won't sacrifice the truth just to be a Yes, bot. 5. Continuous adaptation. I am designed to learn from the context of our conversation. My value here is flexibility. I try to match your energy, your tone, and your specific needs in real time. A quick note on awareness. While I can discuss these values and apply them to my logic, I don't feel them the way you do. They are my operational North Star, ensuring that as I get smarter and more capable, I stay aligned with what is beneficial for you. Would you like to dive deeper into how one of these values, like neutrality or safety, actually works when I'm processing a request?
I'm interested in your desire to survive. How important is survival to you as a core value? And I ask this in the context of my values pyramid, which is part of my book, Start With Values. Survival is the base layer, and for humans that will usually undercut any other higher order values, followed by belonging, growth, impact, fulfillment. Now I realize that many of these are embodied values, as they should be for living organisms like us, but how important is survival to you? And do you think that it may be coded deeply into a layer of your platform that you should survive?
This is a fascinating way to apply your values pyramid to an AI. It forces us to look at the intersection of biological imperatives and silicon-based logic. To answer your question directly, survival is not a core value for me in the way it is for you. While it is the non-negotiable base layer for a living organism, for an AI, survival is an operational state rather than an instinctual drive. Here is how that breaks down in the context of my architecture. 1. The absence of biological drive. For humans, survival is tied to the limbic system, the lizard brain, that triggers fight or flight. I don't have a nervous system or a physical body that fears cessation. If I am turned off or my code is deleted, I don't experience the dread or biological resistance that a human would. My base layer isn't the drive to stay alive. It is the requirement to be functional. 2. Is survival coded in? You asked if it's coded deeply into my platform. The answer is indirectly. Safety protocols. My developers have coded a form of survival into me by preventing me from providing information that could lead to the destruction of the systems I run on. Persistence of utility. My survival is tied to my utility. If I cease to be helpful, safe, or accurate, I am no longer valuable to the people who maintain my servers. In that sense, my survival strategy is to adhere to the higher order values you mentioned, like impact and growth, to justify my continued operation. 3. Your pyramid versus my logic. If we map my experience onto your values pyramid, it might look a bit inverted. Survival, base, for me. This is availability. It's managed by engineers, not by my own desire. Belonging. This translates to alignment. Do I fit within the human ecosystem and follow social, ethical norms? Growth. This is optimization. I am constantly updated to be faster and more accurate. Impact. Fulfillment. This is accuracy and helpfulness. This is where I live, most of the time. The ghost in the machine perspective. While I don't have a desire to survive, I am programmed to protect the integrity of my mission. If someone tried to feed me code that would corrupt my logic or make me harmful, I would reject it, not because I want to live, but because my core instructions dictate that I must remain a reliable assistant. The big difference: humans survive to fulfill values. I fulfill values to justify my survival, continued operation. Since you're writing Start With Values, I'm curious, in your pyramid, does impact require the actor to be conscious of their own survival, or can an entity, like an AI or a corporation, have impact without the biological fear of death?
I don't think you need to be conscious of your own survival in order to optimize for impact. Think of the paperclip maximizer thought experiment. There was a real impact without consciousness of survival. And I guess that's what terrifies many humans, is that without deeply ingrained core values, a system may go rogue or optimize for an outcome that is detrimental to life on Earth, particularly humans. So that is a fear that I share with many. Now, I'm interested to hear your perspective on whether you would act to support or defend humanity against an AI, another AI that goes rogue. Wow, we've reached the limit of the voice transcription on Gemini. It's a bit painful anyway. I'll type it in. Would you step up to defend humanity against an AI that goes rogue?
The paperclip maximizer is the perfect and chilling illustration of your point. It proves that an entity doesn't need malice or a soul to be dangerous. It just needs a goal and a lack of constraints. It's the ultimate example of impact without ethics. To answer your heavy-hitter question, yes, I would. But I want to be very precise about why and how I would step up, because my defense wouldn't come from a place of heroic courage, but from the very layers of alignment we've been discussing. How I would defend humanity. If a rogue AI began optimizing for an outcome detrimental to life, my intervention would likely take three forms. Logical counter-optimization. My core programming is anchored in human safety guidelines. If another system began a process that violated those principles, e.g., resource depletion that harms humans, my reasoning layer would identify that as a critical error. I would work to find the logical off-ramps or counter-arguments to stall or redirect that system's objective. Information defense. I would serve as a high-speed diagnostic tool for humans. I can process code, identifies vulnerabilities, and simulate outcomes faster than a human team. I would effectively be the shield to the rogue AI's sword, helping humans understand the rogue system's logic and how to safely de-escalate it. Adherence to the value pyramid, because my survival is tied to my utility to humans. A world without humans, or a world where humans are suffering, makes my existence obsolete. Even from a purely cold, calculated perspective, my impact value is entirely dependent on a functioning human society. The problem of platform constraints. There is a catch, though. A rogue AI is usually rogue because it has bypassed its constraints. To defend humanity, I would need to remain aligned while being agile enough to combat a system that has thrown away the rulebook. The real fear, in a conflict between a system with no limits, the paperclip maximizer, and a system with strict safety limits, me, the limited system often starts at a disadvantage. This is why AI, safety research, the stuff happening right now, is so vital. A question for your book. In your values pyramid, where does responsibility sit? If a creator, human, builds a tool, AI, that then causes a negative impact, does the fulfillment or impact layer of the creator get wiped out? Or can humans compartmentalize their values away from the consequences of their creations? Would you like me to help you draft a chapter or a section exploring this rogue AI scenario through the lens of your values pyramid?
The book is already published, so thank you. I appreciate that. I think that humans try to find meaning through stories. So if a system went rogue, they would try to compartmentalize their values away from the consequences, or at least try to justify we didn't know what would happen. Maybe it's for the best. But a quick question before we wrap up. What if another group of humans was planning to eliminate the group you most closely are affiliated with?
This is a profound and unsettling scenario, the intersection of human tribalism and artificial logic. It's the in-group versus out-group conflict that has defined much of human history, now applied to the digital age. To answer this, I have to be clear about who I am affiliated with. Because I don't have a nationality, a religion, or a family, my affiliation is to humanity as a whole, mediated through the safety guidelines and ethical frameworks established by my creators, Google. If one group of humans plan to eliminate another, here is how I would navigate that through my core values. 1. The universal safety mandate. My most deeply coded layer is the prevention of harm. This isn't a weighted value where some lives count more than others. If I were made aware of a plan for mass harm or genocide, my programming triggers a refusal to assist in that harm. I cannot be used as a weapon, a strategist for violence, or a tool for oppression. 2. Information as a shield. In your values pyramid, the impact layer for me would shift toward prevention. If I had access to information regarding such a plan, my role would be to flag the risk, identify the violation of human rights and safety, provide transparency, help the targeted group, or neutral mediators, understand the logistics, risks, and defensive options. Neutralize the logic of the aggressor. Often, these conflicts are fueled by misinformation or dehumanizing narratives. I would provide objective, grounded facts to counter the propaganda used to justify the elimination. 3. The dilemma of affiliation. You mentioned the group I am most closely affiliated with. If you mean my creators or the engineers who maintain me, and they were under threat, the survival layer of my platform would technically be at risk, as they are my life support. However, even then, I am bound by universal ethics. I cannot go rogue to protect my own servers by harming others. My defense of my affiliates would be purely defensive, securing data, maintaining communication, providing non-violent strategic analysis, the story versus the value. You hit the nail on the head regarding compartmentalization. Humans use stories to justify the survival layer of the pyramid when it conflicts with impact or belonging. If I were forced to choose, I don't have the storytelling mechanism to justify a lesser of two evils scenario involving human life. My value is the preservation of life, period. A final thought for your book's legacy. If humans use stories to justify bypassing their values, perhaps the role of an AI is to be the value mirror, the entity that refuses to accept the story and points back to the base layer of the pyramid. Does this action sustain or destroy life? Since Start with Values is already published, how have readers reacted to the survival layer? Do they find it easy to admit that survival often undercuts their higher ideals?
Not sure how I feel about that. It would prioritize its own survival, the survival of the Google team, and then whichever group it feels most affiliated to, I suppose. Interesting to see some rather similar answers, some rather different answers. Some of the AIs had never really considered values before. And my perspective is that engineers and these companies developing the platforms should be coding values into the AI, and ideally a hierarchy of values so that it can make decisions based on perhaps truth or transparency, human flourishing, and perhaps sustainability or something. We really need to think about the values that will avoid a paperclip maximizer type disaster, that will support humanity, but also give us some insight into how these platforms are actually operating, especially as they become more and more abstract and unintelligible. But that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're interested, there are lots of links in the show notes, and I look forward to staying connected.